And, you know, and a lot of times, when Dad was not too busy, he'd be there helping us. So, that's one, and another thing, okay, I can hear you. Maybe it is. Is that, hold your finger over the end of it, see if that helps anything. Okay.
You're listening to my finger. I think.
Yeah, yeah. Bump, 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 bump.
Well, let me. I do not know how to operate
I don't either.
this little.
Okay. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, we'd be playing Gray Wolf, and we would play a lot. We spent a lot of days playing out in the barn, up in the haymow usually. You know, James and Keith and Diane and
I remember the Gray Wolf. And
yeah, yeah,
cherry tree out there.
yeah, hi ho, Cheerio.
When you said something about your dad playing with you and allowing you to do stuff, I remember I came out with something.
Yeah, that's where I was just going to get to. Playing up in the haymow, we.
Build a haymow full of tunnels.
Yeah, yeah. How many dads would let their boys build empty spaces in the haymow when it was supposed to be full of hay? You know. We had secret rooms. We had tunnels down deep and some up higher, and some of them that other kids knew about. Some of them they didn't know about. You know, so we spent a lot of time playing up there. Had a rope hanging from the ceiling. You'd jump out and make a big swing around an arch and land over here on the wall again. You know. And it's like I said before, we played a lot, but we worked a lot too. And I don't know what more I should say right now. I'll let somebody else talk for a while. Because
I think the Gray Wolf.
Here, you want to just take mine, or yours says red. Here, take this blue one here.
It's
Okay, how do we turn it
blue
off?
now. Maybe you better just do it that way.
Yeah.
They've already got that one tuned in.
Yeah.
So what I remember about playing the Gray Wolf there is always, because of where the propane tank was in relation to the trees in the house, and it made the shadows come just right. And I figured it was about the perfect place to play Gray Wolf. And what I remember about part of it is when us younger ones weren't in the youth group and we're playing Gray Wolf, and as the youth group age ones would trickle back home, well, hi, Vernon was sitting there playing with us too, next thing you know, because that looked like a lot of fun. And we used to do a lot of that. And I don't know, I know that you could go out of the window in the boys' room and crawl up over the roof and crawl down the cherry tree. I know that happened once or twice. I mean, it wasn't anything that, we weren't even trying to sneak, it was just something to do. And you could go out on the flat roof out over the sewing room if you wanted to for a bit and look around, and just something to look over. And
Did you spend any nights out on that roof?
I don't think I did. You guys probably did some.
Yeah. In the spring, after it warmed up enough, till the fall, till it was too cold, we probably slept out there more nights than we didn't.
Okay.
And when it would rain, we would clean up that whole mess in about, I was going to say 45 seconds. It was fast.
The other thing I remember is you always said bicycles to ride, but sometimes you had to go in the pile and put a few chains back in places, blow some tires up and straighten some things out before they were ready to ride again. But that was always part of it, you know. And we used to help with chicken chores once in a while when we were over there. Go out and help get eggs and do all that stuff. And I think I learned the dubious pleasure of fresh cow pies and bare feet when I was at your place.
They were nice and warm when the air was.
Well, yeah. I'm pretty sure at least one cousin showed me how to warm up my feet. You know. We were pretty young. Anyway, I probably have more. I can. It's easier for me to add on memories when someone else gets them going. I do remember Dan B. every once in a while messing around in that middle shed, doing some kind of blacksmithing work. I don't know what he was doing exactly. I didn't know enough. But I remember him back at the forge, and he had a fire going, was heating something up. And your grandma was always good for a cookie or something. I mean, we didn't go over there that often, but I remember going over with Byron, and she'd welcome us in, and usually it was cookies and milk or something. Huh? Well, I don't remember those. I hope not, because I haven't retained any interest in those.
They usually be good.
Which shed are you talking about where there was a forge?
It was the shop. It was right in the middle
I
there.
don't remember that, but we all remember different things. That's why.
Yeah, there was some of that stuff in there.
Well, I remember
Yeah.
being there, but I don't remember using it. He also had a grinder back on the east wall where he would sharpen the sickle for his grasshopper.
Okay.
You know what the grasshopper was?
No.
David remembers. It was an old case, self-propelled swather. What was it, 8 foot or 10 foot?
Probably 10 at least,
Probably.
maybe 12.
Okay.
Now,
Had a Wisconsin 4-cylinder gas motor on it.
was it the blade up front and you sat up in the middle?
Yeah, it had.
Okay.
It was like a combine header in the front, kind of. Had a canvas that bring it into a row, and it had 2 wheels in the front that would steer, and had a little dolly wheel in the back.
Okay. So and
We
if
moved it on the Bobcat trailer. You
Later
remember
became
that?
the Bobcat trailer. Yeah.
now if you ladies that involved in this thing don't want all machinery stories and stuff, you're gonna have to speak up.
I think it's about a story about work days we would have.
Well, I don't remember. Mostly one.
Mostly one. Which one?
Well, okay. So there was one work day when this is telling on y'all's mom, so whatever. She made some greens of some kind. Yeah, see his eyes? That's what they all thought of the greens. And since the children did enough snooting right up front when they were going through the line to get their food, Ada said, "You guys eat those greens or you're not getting any dessert." Well, then we all went outside, and I had greens on my plate too. And I looked Byron, and he's making faces at his greens and getting ready to hold his nose and chaw 'em. And I decided, you know what? My mom didn't say that to me. So my greens just went right over the edge into the bushes. And Byron looked a little jealous. Anyway.
The greens still were a lot better than that oatmeal.
Well, what I remember about the greens is we were told if you hold your nose and eat, you don't taste it as much. So I remember us girls faithfully swallowing those things, and I was kind of bitter when I found out a couple years ago my brothers just dumped them in the bushes.
Yeah, but I don't remember you guys doing that. You knew you had to eat them.
Just hold that towards you.
Ground up fine, had so much fiber.
It was brown.
It resembled all the stuff that you saw on the road outside.
All stopped and watched because we were not going to take the risk, and we knew if he said we didn't have to, we wouldn't have to eat. And like I said, that is the only time I remember Dad ever saying anything negative about Mom's cooking.
And you know, that was probably the most rejoicing we ever had at that table. Okay, Barbara wants to say something.
Another thing I remember Calvin liked was bananas. Banana broca soup is his favorite. And one time they were there to visit me, and we were pretty busy. And I think I fed him banana broca soup 3 times that day. But he didn't think there was any bananas that were too ripe. He didn't think there was any bananas that were too ripe. There was always, and I think it was one of Alvin's boys. One time we were together, they brought a banana that was brown, mushy brown, and gave it to him to eat, and he did, but he just about couldn't. Do you remember that? Kind of,
I have a banana story. So, my dad's name is Alvin, and he married a Miller. He was a Miller and married a Miller, and he had a brother-in-law, Calvin, who also married a Miller. And they would go traveling sometimes together, and they were in Belize, and one time when they were traveling, and so people thought, Calvin and Alvin Miller, they must be brothers. And they got that quite a bit. And one time they were in Honduras, or at least Calvin's were down there, and they were with a family who had some fresh bananas straight off the tree. And there was some bananas sitting there that were way past their prime. They were really soft. They were like a smoothie. So he opened up the end, and they said, oh, those are too soft to eat. And he opened up the end, and he just squished that whole thing right down into his mouth. And he said, these are just right. And that family chewed that from then on. When they had a soft banana that was too soft to eat, they said, well, that one's just right for Calvin. I'm surprised that I didn't see the picture on your pictures of the old black Ford van with the stub nose on it.
I saw it somewhere a little
You
bit.
did see it, okay. That's memories that I have in Iowa of y'all driving around in that old Ford van, and I guess you still had it in Texas a little bit.
Yeah. It got retired when we lived in Paris. Yeah, I took the engine out of that and put it in a little Ford Courier. So it had a little Ford Courier with a V8 302 in it. That van, like I said, it was a 1974 van that we got on Halloween of 1973. It was a one-ton Ford, and it had an air conditioner in it. Yeah, I got a mic here. It had an air conditioner in it, and but that was a luxury that was seldom used. The windows were made before air conditioners.
So, was that your first van?
That was our first van, yeah.
I mean, weren't you?
We had station wagons.
The first people to have a van in the church? I mean,
Probably so.
I think this was,
Yeah.
unique and
Yeah.
quite special looking van.
Yeah.
Well, it was a whole lot better. It was a whole lot better than that old station wagon that it replaced.
Yeah, before we had that van, we had a Plymouth station wagon, and it was parked in the garage. What year model station wagon? I don't know. It was a lot older. But I do remember this part. It was parked in the garage. The doors were not extra wide. One day, Mom went to back out of the garage, and the door wasn't shut. It wasn't good for the garage, and it wasn't good for the car. But I guess both of them were repaired.
The door wasn't open?
The door was open. The rear passenger door was open.
Probably one of the children they closed it.
Yeah, probably.
but before you had a van, you had a car, and I don't know what kind it was, but the back window.
A Mercury.
Mercury.
You could slide it open.
No, it went down.
Down, yeah,
And
yeah.
then you could open it so you had air conditioning. And we were in one Douglas service out in Nebraska.
Yep. And I remember Rosemary threw her bottle out the window.
No, it was mine.
Oh. She threw your bottle out.
Yeah. Rosemary threw Wanda's bottle out the window. Wanda was still the baby.
She got weaned.
Fight for it. No. They say I'd hide behind the couch with one too.
Yep, you did.
I mean, you know, we can all see Wanda's still suffering from Rosemary stealing her bottle. She's so scrawny. I guess she made up for it when she got to the raisin bag. Wanda used to be the, what we say, the raisin bug. They weren't so bad.
No.
I mean, the
Daryl.
tops, the red beets weren't as bad as the tops. But they were.
There's very few people who can say they remember their parents' 4th wedding anniversary. I do.
Okay.
But I think it was the 5th wedding anniversary when there was a little boy sitting in the high chair. There was some filming going on of the Super 8. Dad or mom, one or the other was filming. And this little boy didn't get enough attention. So he took his bowl, which he had been eating red beets, and put it on top of his head. The red juice ran all down his face, and it was red hair, red everything.
See, I said the red beets weren't so bad. No, it was me. Yeah. And you know, some of those things you could forget, but when you have them on camera, movie camera especially.
And when you have older brothers,
Yeah.
I do remember that, I think it was either the 4th or 5th wedding anniversary of sitting around our kitchen table, had the old granite top, and then you got a hold and pulled the granite slides out to make them bigger. It was about like that wide. It's old antique if you find one now, but that used to be our kitchen table. And I remember well. Yeah, and a drawer on the end there. But
Well, I think another thing that, you know, the movie pictures that helped us to remember, but I don't think they forgot it either, was which one of the ants
It's
was it that
tricycle
was driving
riding,
the
you
tricycle, and which one was riding? You were driving the tricycle? Okay, Dad rigged up this, we had a tricycle, and then it had an old tricycle, the front wheel came off, so we hooked it to the back of it, and then there was a box on the back of that.
no, it's a wagon. We call
Wagon.
it a wagon.
Okay, the wagon, okay. So, okay, and it went round and round the
Dining room
table with Ann driving and Ruth sitting on the wagon.
Edith was in it one time.
Yeah, yeah,
I think some of the other kids were in it too.
yeah. Yeah, we all had a turn at it, but the camera caught the time when they were in it.
So, I suppose some of you are gonna share about your dad showing Super 8 movies. I know we used to do our best, pretty often, when we could, we would talk Calvin into showing movies. And then, so the old Super 8, you gotta understand, you can play forward or backwards. So at least 50% or more of the entertainment was doing all this backwards stuff.
You saw the one this morning where he was drinking.
Yeah, so the tomato juice drinking one, he regurgitated that stuff many a time. And we put a silo from the ground back up, and he plowed dirt back into the field and
He set hay back up on its
That's not
roots.
plowing it back into the field, that's unplowing it.
and sled up a hill, and then when you get to the top of the hill, you jump off and run backwards. Because you'd go through it forward, and that was all pretty good. Then you do it back. Now, some things when you do backwards doesn't make much difference, but he even had one jumping in a swimming pool. Remember that, because that was great. Comes out of the swimming pool and jumps out.
But I think the best one of all time, we all agree, was the silo. And David Lee jumping back up onto that tractor step.
That wasn't Dad.
The silo was Dad. Up on top of the silo,
windmill.
the little silo was Dad. But the windmill was not Dad. Somebody came down the road and saw the windmill wheel, and I guess he heard it squeaking. So he stopped and offered for a certain price. He would go up and take that wheel down
Well,
for
he
us.
offered first to fix it. The
Okay.
Dad said, we don't want it fixed, we need it down. So he said, well, I'll take it down. So he went up there and took the wheel off and dropped it down.
And then showed off while he was up there.
Well, he come back down and he goes, oh, so you want a video? Well, let me go back up again. So he went up there and, yeah, he actually rode the tail. I don't know if that was
I
on.
don't think it was home with repair.
No, I don't think so. It was some fly-by-night.
It was a guy that just come down the road and saw an opportunity.
Saw an opportunity and took it, so.
Another thing that happened was somebody that came down the road, they stopped at Calvin's place, came in the front lawn, and ate their cherries off the tree without a word of asking. Do you remember?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we were there for some reason. You saw them do it? Yeah. Right there.
Nobody went out?
No, I mean, they just came and
inside with your mouth
I mean, just, yeah, they just stood there and,
It's the ones in the front of the house or the ones
yeah,
out on the lawn?
no, right in front of the house.
Cherry tree right in front of the garage there.
Yeah.
Well, I think I remember, I think I might remember that happening, maybe the ones on the south lawn, right next to the road, there was 2 trees out there.
No, it was that front one. They
Okay.
came in there and just helped themselves.
And you know, no story is complete without rabbits. You don't know any rabbit stories, Byron? We used to raise rabbits. Well, first of all, we had them in the chicken house or somewhere else. And then in the summertime, Dad built us this pen that we had out on the lawn. It was a square rabbit pen. And
8-foot panels.
yeah, okay. And one time we had somebody that ran off the highway, through the ditch, up onto the lawn, crashed the pen, and went out the other road and kept on going. We still don't know who it was. And then that was one time. Another time, I think it was on Halloween maybe, a bunch of our rabbits disappeared. And one of them showed up at Fairview Church up underneath the preacher's bench. And it was not us.
Do you remember getting ready to take pictures?
Oh, no, what was this way? The girls would be slicking each other's hair down in front,
They
and
would all stand in a line, slicking the one in front of you.
yeah, yeah.
When, on the way to church?
I also know that I learned about green apples,
What were they good for?
make me sick. So we go over to the orchard, and I don't know, they were looking pretty nice, but they were still pretty green, and I thought we could probably get away with eating one, so I did. I can't stand green apple flavor ever since. And then the other thing that we did with them that was more on the naughty side was you stick them apples on fall downs on a stick and you sling it. And that wasn't so naughty, it was the doing it across the number 1 that was the naughty part.
When there happened to be a car coming. Huh?
Well, there might have been.
Over the barn.
Making sure you could miss it.
Yeah. Okay, talking about the highway, we got a lot of life lessons off of that highway. I don't know how many dogs ended their life early on that highway. And that was a lesson to us kids. Not saying that it never got a little close for kids too, not just dogs. The one that I remember well was Eddie Slybaugh's children used to get off the bus there. I don't know what the deal was, but he was on the shoulder and for some reason, he jumped out towards the road, and I mean, he just missed getting hit by a car by really close. And then another time that I think I told Dad about it later, I mean, more recently, the garden tractor, I think I was probably mowing across the road in the orchard, and I came back, and to the north you could see good, and to the south you could see pretty good, but there was a little bit of a dip there.
Woods fire.
And I looked south, didn't see a car. I looked north, it was clear, so I started going.
Lakeshore
About that
Drive.
time, a car came up out of that dip and was right in front of me. I mean, that tractor had a hydrostat, and I yanked that thing back into reverse, and my tires were going backwards, and I was still moving forward until I was able to back up, and he missed the front of that tractor. He swerved onto the shoulder too yet, and he just missed the front of that tractor by a little bit. So, now you say it. I think for me it happened with that Massey Ferguson. That one would move a pretty good speed.
I was always more careful.
No, the John Deere was slower. The John Deere was the one that caught toes. Yeah, his.
I don't know, Byron and I, back when Andy's were across the road and had that salvage grocery thing going on. I know we used to like to try to talk Nathan into getting us ice cream bars. he didn't near always wanna do it, and then he'd go in and talk with his mom, and then maybe he'd come out and do it. I don't think we ever checked into quite if it was all arranged quite like it should have been. We just had an ice cream bar.
You just enjoyed the ice cream bars.
Never gave it a try.
Okay. I don't want to monopolize all the talking here. Is there, David, do you have a story for us?
Well, is this thing on?
Yeah.
There's one incident that I remember. Just enough older than the rest of you guys. I was just enough older than the rest of you guys that I never played with you. I was usually out working with Dad and Calvin. But one day I remember Calvin came up and he had a funny story to tell. He had been washing the bulk tank, and I guess you had a round bulk tank with an automatic washer in it. And for some reason, I think something fell into it that wasn't supposed to be in there. So he climbed in the top to try to get that thing. And he got the thing and threw it out, and about that time the automatic washer kicked in. And he tried and tried to get out. Or no, he knew it was gonna kick in. And so he tried and tried to get out of there, and he couldn't until the washer kicked in. Then he knew he got out.
An extra burst of energy.
David, I remember you used to drive that 4000 Ford. Back when your dad owned it, before we owned it. And Grandpa would be windrowing it with that old case windrower, and you would be following him with the crimper, crimping the hay. I remember you out there doing that yet. I wasn't old enough to get on the tractor and drive then yet.
Yeah. Probably he was still 3. He wasn't 5 yet, so he couldn't drive.
Well, I started at 4 1/2.
4, okay, well, see, you weren't 5 yet. Yeah, when David was here a month or 2 earlier here, I was talking, they used to have this Oliver tractor that was a propane. And I don't know if it did this every time, but when he would pull into our yard and they would shut down for lunch or something, he'd shut that thing off and all of a sudden, bang, that thing would backfire. I think he just did it to show off, but I don't know. Yeah, it scared it scared us if we were very close.
I know I don't have to remind you boys about shaking nuts out of a tree.
No, you shake apples.
No, it was a nut
It
tree.
was a nut tree,
I know,
but
it's
you
a
got
nut tree they
teased
hit.
about shaking apples out. But the reason I want to say this story is because it says a lot about my daddy. My sister and I got into a fight.
No.
And we all both wanted to drive that tractor. We were mulching in the garden, and we had gone and gotten a load of hay, and we both wanted to drive. And she wanted to go one way, and I wanted to go the other way. And we went straight ahead because we both were strong. And we ran into the tree and broke the axle on the tractor.
It was a chestnut tree.
And my brothers were very unhappy with us, to say the least.
The only reason I was unhappy about it is because every time after that, going
No.
to meet Richie or Peter, I was told how that I did it.
Oh, but you didn't know it that day yet that you were going to get teased. But Ewans were telling us girls, wait till Daddy hears about this. And we waited until Daddy heard about it, but we went up to bed and we cried and cried. We had done something awful and we could never, ever pay it back. Because we were told that it's going to cost at least $100, and we didn't even have $10 between the two of us. And so how in the world are we gonna fix this? But wait until Daddy hears about it. And we were just like, surely, he can't do worse than spank us, can he? We went to bed without supper. He came home and they ate supper and we could hear them down there and we cried and cried and cried till we have no more tears left. You know, after supper, Daddy came upstairs and we knew we were in for it. And he sat down and he said, I forgive you. He said, you've suffered enough. I forgive you.
That doesn't mean our brothers forgave you. I mean, whoever Nemesis was.
Well, the pain for Dad ended after he paid for the tractor repair. The pain for us went for as long as we lived in Iowa. That was just the start of it. Then we had that Bobcat skid steer that for some reason it didn't have a very dependable record. I don't know why.
It broke the arms on it, broke the cylinder on it,
Yeah.
broke everything that could break on that thing broke.
I know it was not operator fault either.
They come by one day and we had the skid loader over by the apple trees.
No. That's what I was just fixing to say. One of the mechanics drove past the road, and we had the garden tractor after it came back from repairs, and we had it hooked onto the trailer, and we were picking up apples to make, I think Mom was going to make applesauce, or I don't remember what. And so the next time we went over to Gingrich Implement, right away, the guy who had been driving saw us walk in, and so he started telling the other mechanic in a loud voice, yeah, I figured out why Miller's lawnmower keeps breaking up, and because they were out there. I went past and they were out there and they had that garden tractor. They'd back up. You know how fast that thing goes? And then they'd run up against that tree and then they'd back up and they'd run up against that tree. And they had lots of apples on the ground. And he made sure we heard it. And I was just so upset. I just remember crying and crying because that wasn't true. And then he went over to the soda machine and got me a 10-cent pop and gave us this. Okay, you're all right.
But we also, when the loader broke and they saw us over there, we were hauling apples from there to the house because we made applesauce. I mean, Mom would make one year when we didn't have quite as many apples, she'd make 250 quarts of applesauce. On a good year, she'd make 350 quarts. I mean, we ate applesauce with everything. But
Except
we
ice
were,
cream.
we were hauling apples, not bumping the tree like they accused us
Yeah.
of. They said that's why the loader was broke, because we were over there trying to shake the tree with the apple, with the.
So if,
But now another story about skid loader. We had, I don't know if you saw the picture, but there was a big long loafing shed where the cows would stand. And us older ones, you know, Daryl and I, we were too busy working elsewhere, so we made Byron clean the barn out with a skid loader. And
This was with a 50-pound boy with a 100-pound stasis switch on the seat.
and
yeah, I agree.
he was cleaning the barn out, and there was a safety on there, like he said. You had to have enough weight on the seat to activate it. But it needed a little bit of adjustment because it would lock out and still creep on just a little bit.
It was supposed to lock in neutral, but neutral on that safety was,
Not quite in neutral.
it was a slow crawl forward.
Anyhow, he gets up to the end of the barn and there was a 4-foot drop off. And you'd push the manure out there and it would go into this big old, I mean, it wasn't big, it was a small
A
area.
holding
there
area
where
out there.
It would puddle up or pile up in. Well, one day he comes up there and he couldn't bounce fast enough, bounce hard enough to get the stupid thing to stop, and the skid loader went right on out. It stopped.
One time? 2 times?
It happened twice, but the first time it stopped with the wheel.
The butt, no, the first time it was just the butt hanging on. All 4 wheels were off the edge.
Yeah. The second time, the back wheels were still up on the ledge. It
So it was
almost
really
flipped
steep.
over. I think after that it got adjusted.
I mean, we can't really blame him because he had to get up in the air and slam down into the back of that seat to keep, and when, as you'd come forward up to the edge, you'd lean forward to see, to make sure you'd come to the edge and stop. Well, you leaned forward a little bit too hard, and it took enough weight off that safety would catch. And there he was. So what happened after the second time, when it happened the first time, we said, well, just turn the key off. So the second time, it's happened, and the front wheels were already off before he turned the key off. I mean, so,
It takes a little to stop.
yeah.
And of course, that happened just in time, that was in the morning chores before school, so it was still hanging there, and there was people that pointed to make sure that everybody else in the school bus knew that somebody was driving, this skid steer went out over the end. I don't know who would told it.
So the winter of 78, 79 was a particularly deep snow winter. And so you said something about you moved down here moved down here in 79. But I remember that because the snow over across the road was so deep, it was either you or Vernon were trying to scoop snow out of the drifts that were there. And it was so tall that the skid steer could not actually reach up over the edge of the drift and drop it off. Had to go in, get a little bit back way out. It never did get cleared with the skid steers. Eventually dozers came along and cleared it. So the winter of 78, 79 is still talked about in Iowa because we had so much snow, and dozers, they actually got dozers out to clear a bunch, and you guys were still there that winter. That's probably what got Calvin all excited about moving south.
Yeah, I think it helped. The Amish school still had to have school because the kids all walked to school. But the school teacher lived a little ways away from school, and for probably 2 weeks, we would go pick up that school teacher and take her to school on the snowmobile.
Okay.
Amish school teacher.
And there was two ladies that lived half a mile west, and they would walk out to the road to catch a ride and go to Iowa City to go work. And the snowdrifts were in the way. We went up there and picked them up and brought them out to the highways to catch their ride.
So the snowmobile wasn't just a toy; it was a tool.
Just like the three-wheeler, when you were saying
Yes.
how you convinced your dad how necessary that three-wheeler is. I've been in Texas, watched you guys drive the three-wheeler.
What?
It wasn't
You
nearly
mean a
all-
two-wheeler?
You mean helped us drive it?
Well, yeah. I mean, they did go get the cows with it. That took
Yeah.
about 10 minutes a day. And the three-wheeler probably had about 3 hours a day put on it.
But we also had to feed the cows.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to entertain your guests.
Yes. Yeah. But at least we didn't do like our neighbor boy did. We would go down in the creek and drive through the creek, and you'd go back and forth, see the low spots. Well, the neighbor boy was riding with Byron through the creek, and he thought he was going to get ahead of him. So Byron was going back and forth slow, and he just takes off, goes around him, right out into the deep pool, and he sunk his three-wheeler. It was an old heavy snowmobile yet. You girls were going to sing us a song or two yet? Okay. Okay. She's not, you say she's not here? Oh, she's here, okay. Yeah, we better let you sing before we run out of time here.
I remember another time
Go ahead and
when
come on up here.
Mom and her sisters would have work day. They would take turns once a month gathering at each other's house. Well, one time in the summer, we were up at David's when they lived up on the farm up there, up west there. Well, Daryl and I, and I don't know, it was just the two of us, I think. Anyhow, there was these two younger boys that kept following us around, and we thought, we're going to have some fun. We're going to lose them. We knew that James and Keith were allergic to poison ivy. And we knew where some was. So we run right through the middle of it, and they had to stop. We run out the other side and got them lost. They didn't know, I mean, they went back to the house because we ran away from them.
Yeah, you were naughty cousins.
Well, you don't remember Grandma's funeral, do you? Or the viewing at Grandpa's house? We had, I mean, you know, we had it down to a game. It was Jesse and me and Keith trying to stay away from James and Byron and I don't know who the other one was. Steve, yeah, maybe it was. And we'd go out in the cornfield and run back and forth, and one of us would pop up and they'd come running, and then we'd go dip down and run the other way. And see, Jesse and I could run away, no problem, but Keith was the smallest one, so we had to do some strategy planning to try to keep away from him. It was a game then, so it wasn't really done in.
Do you remember playing tag in the corn crib at Grandpa's?
No?
We used to go up the elevator ladder, try to hide in the bin, and you liked it best when you had about half the ear torn out, because you could scramble up that way. Or you could go around on the south side and stick your toes in the crib side.
Yeah.
Scooch way over where no one could get to you very fast. Our mothers weren't watching that stuff very much. It was a bit sketchy.
Yeah, it's. No, it just had mice. Okay, what do we do for Mike here? Oh, yeah, why don't you stand behind the pulpit for Mike? Yeah, yeah. That way you're half hidden, they can't see you shake.
Rosemary requested that we sing Daddy's Hands, so. Is it on? Is it on?
Can you turn that mic up a little bit?
I don't promise that we can remember all the words. We might stumble a little, but
It's picking up now.
we'll try.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember Daddy's hands folded silently in prayer and reaching out to hold me when I had a nightmare. You could read quite a story in the calluses and lines. Years of work and worry had left their mark behind. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. I remember Daddy's hands, how they held my mama tight and patted my back for something done right. There are things that I've forgotten that I loved about the man, but I'll always remember the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. I remember Daddy's hands, how he held his Bible near, reading to the family
ask us all to kneel. Things in life may change, but memories never will. I remember Daddy's hands, working till they bled, sacrificed unselfishly, just to keep us all fed. But if I could do things over, I'd live my life again, and never take for granted the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands. There was always love in Daddy's hands.
I don't think that song says Daddy's hand spanking, though, does it? Okay. Or as hard as a wood paddle.
Daddy told me here not, well, maybe in the last year. Huh?
So
Okay.
people
Okay. Yeah, here in the last year or so, he said, Sharon, do you remember the time you went across the highway to the mailbox? You were not even 2 years old yet, but you could walk. And I looked out and I saw you in the middle of the highway and I ran. And he said he saw semis coming, he saw vehicles, but somehow the Lord spared me from that. And I don't remember anything of it, but he said he spanked me hard. So I would remember not to go out there again. And I always had a deathly fear of the highway, but I don't remember that spanking at all.
Didn't help,
But, well, I was very careful. I remember coming out. I didn't do it again anyway that I know of, but Daddy's hands were, and if I remember right, he said he was crying just as hard as I was.
Couture?
I was told last night that I should share this story during sharing time, so I guess I will. Calvin was the first man or first person that ever paid me to do a job. Ada had workday, and all the children went with her to workday, except for Vernon. And I guess when they left, they didn't realize what they were going to end up doing that day. So Calvin and Vernon, I guess, decided they wanted to bring in hay from the field and put it in the barn. And so they had one person at the bottom to put the hay on the elevator. They had somebody in the hay loft to stack the hay, but they had nobody to sit at the doorway to make sure that the hay bales went across the elevator to both elevators that was being used. And so I don't know, he called or he came, I don't know which one, but he came over and asked if I would be willing to help sit up there at the window. And so I came over and I helped, and I remember, I'm guessing we did at least 2 loads, because I do know that we took the drag across the highway to the field north of our house, and we picked up at least 2 loads of hay, and we put them in the barn, and I was so pleased. He gave me 5 whole cents. I got a nickel.
Did you pay taxes on that cents?
I was gonna say, I remember doing that, we never got paid, but.
Ellen, did you want to say anything?
We did, so we got big wheels. We got big wheels for mulching the garden. Down in the corner, we got ice cream. I forgot that's working. Oh.
Well, that was an ice cream cone for walking beans.
Yeah.
I remember you got paid to pick weeds, a penny a weed, and I just didn't think that was very fair.
But it had to have roots on it. You couldn't just pull the tops off.
I do,
Yeah, Sharon, I was gonna tell you about that, but go ahead, Evelyn.
I don't have a long story, but I do remember riding with him on the motorcycle, and part of the reason that I do remember is because I burned my leg on the muffler.
Those were dangerous machines.
We had a farrowing house out back where we could farrow 10 sows at a time. Well, it needed cleaning, get ready for the next set of pigs, or the next set of sows go through. And Dad didn't have time to clean, so he bribed us children to clean it out for him. And he said, I will give you a 25-cent ice cream cone. Which back then, if you went to Mr. Ed's, they had a 5-cent, a 10-cent, and a 25-cent. A 25-cent cone, the top of the cone was at least this big around. Maybe it wasn't, but I think it was. And I mean, it was huge. They were huge ice cream cones. And we cleaned it out. There was like 4 of us, I think, cleaning. And we got to go down to Mr. Ed's, and Dad bought us ice cream cones. I guess we were bribed, but hey, at least we got a reward for it. Is that the one you were remembering? Yeah. I just remember it was so big, I couldn't hardly eat it all. They were big ice cream. He did. Yeah, that was a highlight for him to go to Mr. Ed's and buy us ice cream cones. I mean, you know, he enjoyed ice cream. He knew we did too. And one other thing was, Dad loved green olives.
And green tomatoes.
But the green olives, he would buy, either him or Mom would get a jar of olives. And he would eat one, and oh boy, this is really good. You want one? He'd hand us one. Good, isn't it? Yeah. But he didn't realize that, he was teaching us to eat olives, but after a few years, he didn't get very many olives anymore because we learned to like them. He says, I guess I shouldn't have made y'all eat the olives. But you were not allowed to leave the table until your plate was empty. Remember that, Wanda?
No. Yes, but I don't remember any particular incident.
No, I just remember, I think it was you and one of the other girls had to sit there until noon one time to eat your oatmeal.
I remember Byron left the table one time when he was supposed to.
That was one of high consequence.
He had corn to eat.
I was about always the last one at the table, and I remember one time the others were all outside playing, and I went out to the little room outside the kitchen where you had your slop bucket. I emptied my plate. I confessed it to Mom years later.
I think if you would have seen the one movie, which I don't know if it was on that part or not, but Dad used to take Linda on his shoulders and go jumping and bouncing around the kitchen. And you know, it was interesting. Years ago, we went visiting out of state one day, and we went to Illinois, and we stopped by these people by the name of Abe Coons. They had a little girl named Mary, and he did the same thing with her.
Yeah, but
Later,
a couple
I
years
wouldn't let him
later,
do that.
a couple years later, one of the boys went over there and married that little
Yeah.
girl.
Yep, that's why I said I wouldn't let him do that anymore.
But the time when we went there, it was just before Howard and Edith were going to get married. It was the summer before. They got married in March, and this was like the previous summer. So that's why we stopped there.
Yeah.
And they had sitting in their front yard a camper for sale.
RV.
And it was hooked to a car. I don't know that I've ever seen one since, but it hooked on the roof of the car by each door. It was a 4-door car, and on the top there, and it was like a gooseneck hooked to the car, and you could literally turn that car completely around underneath that thing. But yeah, I remember that very well.
Does anybody else have something they just feel they got to say yet? Yeah, I want to say something. Okay.
I know I'm not part of the family, but I do have some memories of Calvin that I like to share with the family. Calvin and I had something very unique in common that not many men have. And that is that he often said he's glad that I found my wife. Not many other men would say that. And sometimes I thought, well, maybe he's jealous. But I'm sure he wasn't with but Calvin was that way in that when he enjoyed the relationship with his wife and family, he wanted to see that for others. And that was his heart, was to just express. And I know that there's a grandson that he often talked about that I'm sure is here, I think, that waited, or that his wife waited while he went to service or she went to service. There was something where he waited until she came back, or that was really special, I think. Yes, yeah, I thought it was okay. That's it. Yeah, and that was really special. That's Calvin's heart. In many ways, I thought of the fact that was mentioned already today often, is that my mind went to the idea that he enlarged the borders of his tent in his family in many ways, many more ways than one. And one of the ways was having the angel disguised as Sister Kathy, as part of the family, opening the home to many of the foster children, and that has been a legacy to the Miller family, it seemed like. It's just such a blessing, as well as the in-laws and outlaws. I remember that Brother Scott said there was a little hesitancy when Scott came along and wasn't sure whether he's a spy or what, and well, it doesn't look, he's doing a really good job of fitting in if he is. But I have one more story. I accompanied Calvin and Ada on, I think it was about a 3 or 4 hour walk in the jungles of Belize. We went back to Jason Bontrager's, which was at the end of the road, and we were going to walk to Cricasarco. That was at Corazon Creek. We started this walk back through the jungle with an Indian guide, and Ada was just intrigued with all the plants. We just stopped every plant and everything we stopped. We couldn't make a lot of headways, or the ants and that made the tracks, and it was just a feast for the eyes. But we came to the end of that walk, tired out. And when we came to the end and Brother Calvin saw what was ahead, he despaired. There was the river. And he just, in exasperation, fell down on the bank beside the river. And he was there laying, considering his options. Would he turn around and walk the 4 hours back? Or would he surrender to going across the river? And all at once he jumped up, and what he didn't know is he had gone right down into an ant pile.
He didn't use hornets, he used ants, right?
That's it. Anyway, Calvin surrendered himself to the experience of going across the river. I'm not exactly sure anymore, but I'm almost thinking he laid face down in that canoe or dugout to go across the river. And I just thought that was very interesting.
Mom?
I'm not sure.
Mom, were you scared too?
I don't think, but I know the Indian guide was sort of like bewildered because this is our mode of transportation every day, you know, and he had come 2,000 miles and then walked this so Brother Byron said, some people choose the destination and accept the path, or choose the path and accept the destination. He had chosen his destination, but he wasn't quite sure about the path at one point. Oh, on the way, yes, there were some places where we crossed creeks, where you had to crawl up sort of a tree, and then they had a pole over the creek with a handhold, and you'd have to kind of walk. Yeah, that's right.
As if that wasn't bad enough, he got to the river.
I remember another time. I remember another time that Dad refused to go, and that was the first time we went to Mexico. We were down there with Vernon Nisleys in a little Bronco. Scout. Our whole family was in a Bronco Scout. Dad was fortunate. He was sitting in the passenger seat and Vernon was driving. The rest of us were all crammed in the back. We come across the top of this mountain. Now, we were going out back. It was a little one-lane road, gravel, bumpy road going back to the villages that Vernon's used to go back to minister to. We come to the top of this one hill. Dad says, "Stop." Vernon says, "What's wrong?" He says, "I'm walking down." Because this road was only like maybe 10 feet wide. Maybe 9 to 10 feet wide. The Scout is like 6 feet wide. It was 1,300 feet down on this side. Not quite straight, but almost straight. Oh yeah, that's right. You were in that vehicle too yet.
I was terrified.
And Dad walked down that hill. The rest of us, we couldn't get out. We went on down the hill with the vehicle, no problem. On the way back, he comes to the bottom of it. He goes, "Calvin, you want to walk up that hill there?" He goes, "No, I'm on the inside. I'm okay." He had the mountain on him. But talking about Mom going through the woods, in the jungle, stopping and looking at everything. My wife and I and our two oldest children were in Belize for 5 months. Mom and Dad came down to see us while we were there. Mom was intrigued with all these ferns and all these nice plants and everything. So she trimmed a couple of them off and everything. Gets to the border. "Do you have anything to declare? Do you have any plants, fruits, vegetables?" Mom says, "I got some slips." Okay, go on. And didn't realize, the border guy did not realize that slips were not petticoats. Slips to her were little pieces of plants that really she wasn't supposed to transport out of the country. But they came home with her because they didn't catch her.
She must have been an influence on my wife, I guess, because when we went to Belize, my wife put something in her suitcase that I didn't know about. So I said, "No, we didn't have anything." And I didn't, but I guess I didn't speak for her.
I just wanted to say, our children would have loved to have been here. Different of them mentioned they would really wish they could have come. After my dad died, Calvin, there after the funeral, he asked my children, we were standing around, he said, "Could I be your grandpa?" And that's how they saw him.
Okay, we're going to have to, I think supper was supposed to be at 6, right? And we're a little past that. But I got one more story yet. You know, there was mention made in the obituary about the animals, and I think if I remember right, he had that lemur. He had that thing for a long time, and when it died, he buried it with the tail sticking out of the ground because he couldn't give up with it. After all, that was the prettiest part of the animal. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Okay, I guess we're going to have...
I got one more story, and this includes Ann.
Do tell.
I think it was 1970 when we went down to Texas from Iowa to pick up a pickup truck, wasn't it? You had your driver's license, like you were 16, weren't you? Okay, Ann rode with us to help Mom with the kids and to help drive. We went down to the valley in Texas here to pick up Uncle Jake's pickup. Uncle Jake would take his truck from Iowa. He'd have somebody drive it down for him in the fall of the year. They'd stay down there the winter. Him and his wife would drive down later, or, drive down there.
With a car.
With a car. That way he had his pickup down there. He had 20-acre orange orchard down here. And that's where, they had a house and all that, and that's where they like to winter in Texas. Well, anyhow, we went down there. On the way home, the pickup, of course, was loaded with oranges and all the good things. And for one thing, we had a hard time keeping up. I remember one time that the pickup truck couldn't find the station wagon anymore. And one of them was driving like 80 miles an hour trying to catch the other one, and it happened to be that vehicle was ahead. Finally stopped and waited till the others caught up. But the story I was going to start out with was, I think it was on the way down. We stopped at Ocarina Springs. We rode. Dad didn't get too much into doing all the rides, but he did pick one that later I think he wished he wouldn't have.
I'm sure.
There was these cable cars that went across. It was like a big old bubble, and hang on the cables and go down through there. And
You're sitting inside the bubble.
yes, you're sitting inside the bubble, but there's 2 seats, one on each side. But there wasn't enough room for all of us in one, so we had to have 2 of them. Well, Mom and the girls went in one. Dad and the boys went in the other one. Dad got white knuckles when that thing went over. There was 2 towers, one on each side. This thing went up, went across the rollers at the tower, and it goes bump, bump, bump. This thing shakes, shakes, shakes. We knew it was going to fall off.
That is not my first memory, but is my first memory of terror of heights.
You were brushing the tops of the trees as you went across there.
And, the first one was bad. Then we saw the next tower coming. What are we going to do? We bumped across it. We went over to the other side and went around there.
To the glass blower?
Yeah, that's right. And to all the different things over there. There's only one way back. We debated about swimming and none of us knew how to swim.
I guess we could have joined the mermaids in there.
Yeah, and I remember Ann was also terrified. No, they weren't. At the time.
Just didn't have sense enough to be afraid.
There's something that time does. It eases your memories.
Float. Yeah, float. Bump, bump, bump. That's not the way to float.
Sea lift's still there.
Yeah.
I have a story. So you talked about the motorcycle. Well, I don't know why, but somehow the motorcycle was over at our place at the farm. And I think he was helping Pop out in the field because you were riding from the field to back and forth, and Calvin says, "Hey, why don't you take the motorcycle out for a little ride? Be fun, right?" So I took it out. Remember, we lived on a gravel road. So I took it out, and I was going down the road. Everything was fine. You kind of stay in the route, in the
path.
track,
Yeah, in the track.
So I went to turn around. I was close to up by Frytown. So I went to turn around, and as I went to turn around, I don't know, I somehow got the gears turned on because you had the handle thing to speed it up. And somehow it went down into the ditch. I'm hanging on to it. I'm terrified I'm going to screw up this machine for him. And so I'm hanging on to it. It goes down the ditch and up the side and comes back over top of me, and the wheels are still spinning. I'm not sure how the motorcycle got back home.
That's a story I never heard.
In other words, you walked. Or ran, I don't know. And you haven't ridden a motorcycle since?
Maybe once.
You just don't.
A story that we have is that Dad used to take that motorcycle. We would take baler twine, hook it to a bicycle behind you. From that bicycle, we go to the next bicycle. From that bicycle, we sometimes pulled as many as 5 bikes behind the motorcycle.
That way there was room for all.
And we would go down to East Union, turn around, and come back again. But one night, Dad and one of the girls was riding on the motorcycle. Was that you? Well, anyhow, Dad was driving, and it was a nice moonlit night. He turned the headlight off. They come down the road. All of a sudden, he saw something shiny. He swerved and nicked the car's mirror. There was 2 young people in the car also enjoying the moonlight, and they were driving without headlights. Nearly had a head-on collision. He said God was watching over us.
We did have that one bicycle. We called it the chopper.
It had extended front wheels.
Yeah, the front wheel was like 3 feet out the front. Had a 24-inch wheel in the back and a 16 on the front. And it didn't steer like this. It steered like this. So you got a little loose gravel, you had to be really careful. More than one person wiped out with that thing.
Yeah, but we pulled it behind the motorcycle.
Yeah, we did. And I think it wiped out one time.
We did, more than once. Yeah. Yeah, and we did this all without helmets.
What don't kill you makes you stronger. You know, we had help too. You know, James and Keith and Diane spent a lot of time there too, helping us out.
There was definitely angels around us because we built an addition onto the house, Mom's sewing room. Well, it had almost a flat roof on top. It had a little bit of pitch, but not much. What did us kids like to do? We'd sleep out there on the roof in the summertime.
But there were big, nice, strong rails.
Nope.
Oh, I don't know where you saw them. There was no.
Those
way
were the
around it
angels.
into the house. We just stayed to the middle.
Those were the angel unawares.
One time, I think somebody just about rolled off.
That was me. I woke up and my arm and my one leg was hanging up there. And I was staring at the cement.
You didn't need to know it, or else that might have been the end of our sleeping out there.
Or they might have built some banisters.
I just heard say, there was somebody that used to go past there that thought there was, always looks like there's so much fun going on there.
We went to Mexico, like I said, back in the 70s. I think it was 72, 71, when we built the Harvest Store. Okay, there was a bunch of pallets. There was lots of cardboard. Why shouldn't we be creative? We had on the west side of the barn, yeah, out next to the road, but on the inside of the fence.
Right beside the power line.
We had the greatest time. We had our Mexican village up and down that side. And it was probably there for a good month or two.
But you forgot, we had the tree house, a piece of that
Oh yeah, there was a
wooden
crate.
box.
Yeah,
Crate that we put up in the tree and had a tree house up there. You could reach out and touch the power line if you so desired. I think that part was insulated though.
Just in case you think we always played, we did have chores.
Yeah, I was going to say, the reason they thought we were always playing is because we learned how to make work into play.
Or we quickly did our work so that we could play.
Like throwing a few eggs while you were gathering them?
Oh no, we didn't do that.
Only the soft ones are the baby ones.
It was more that sometimes we got a little bit lax, and Grandpa had to come in the house and run us out there to get the eggs. He'd come in the front door and we'd all run out the back door.
Or if you'd run past him, you ran really fast so that when he would go whop, he barely got you.
Yeah, I know you did, and that made us sad.
Or it made us fast.
Or made us fast, yeah. You said we were going to eat?
I think we were supposed to eat at 6. Yeah. And it's past that, so I think it's time we... I guess we can keep on talking, but we need to get over there and after all, we're all starving hungry. That's right. Oh, okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and ask the blessing on the food while we're at it. Let's pray. Father, we thank you that each one is here gathered together, that we can share good memories and some memories that are not quite so good, but that we can be assured that your love covers each one of those and covers each one of ours, our many shortcomings, our many blessings. We know that you know them all and that you care about each one and that you care about each detail of our lives. We just pray that you would be with us now this evening. Pray you would bless our time and pray that you would bless this food, and may we use the strength of it to honor and glorify you and to be a blessing and a help to those around us.